Introduction asterisk. A character destined to perish within 2 chapters of the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, a saintly, intellectually advanced individual, unexpectedly arrives in the continent of Westeros through a serendipitous experiment. Fortified by the enhancements of a wormhole, he embarks on a journey of strategy and intrigue. Prologue asterisk. 15 years after the victory of the Coalition, history has subtly altered its course. In the Stone Dance City, late summer has arrived. The streets are infused with the exhilarating scent of fruits, a delightful change brought forth by the repeated visits of a trading caravan known as the Flooring Company. For the coastal settlement of Stone Dance City, this influx of fresh fruit is nothing short of miraculous. Due to its geographical formation, Stone Dance City is built upon enormous stone blocks. No matter the abundance of rain, the absence of arable land, or even sandy soil renders it a place of sheer stone and an endless expanse of ocean. The locals, reliant on fishing or serving as sailors, have often subsisted on seafood, many of them never having laid eyes on fruit. In the past, logistical challenges meant that even when caravans arrived, they would only bring a meager amount of dried fruits, priced beyond the reach of ordinary families. However, the Flooring Company has begun selling fresh, sweet fruits at relatively low prices and in large quantities, allowing many households in Stone Dance City to indulge in this newfound delicacy. Yet, where light shines, shadows inevitably lurk. Beneath the weight of substantial profit, many covet a share. In the Grand Hall of Stone Dance City, Sir Geron Murendal, the lord of the city, sits alongside a mysterious figure in black, the leader of the Flooring Company. An atmosphere of tension pervades the hall, as Geron feels insulted by the leader's refusal to remove his hat to reveal his face. His anger simmers, but the potential of this lucrative deal compels him to suppress his rage. With a forced smile, he implores, "Might I be honored with a glimpse of your esteemed visage?" The leader, seemingly bashful, replies, "I fear I may startle you, my lord. I will prefer not to. Pray do not be so coy." Geron interjects somewhat rudely. "Very well, if you insist, my lord, I shall." As he speaks, the cloaked figure slowly lifts his hat, revealing a face imbued with a striking charisma, remarkably clean and noble. Geron is taken aback as the figure speaks, "I have come from the eastern land of the Great Tang." Chapter 1. The Wormhole Particle Crossing. The Bear Man gazes eagerly at the particle collider that is about to commence, his heart racing with anticipation. Only 10 seconds remain until the dawn of the 21st century's most monumental experiment. Years of arduous research are on the brink of fruition, and he reflects, "Our comprehension of the universe has advanced yet again. Though it may be a mere step, it could potentially dictate the trajectory of human technological advancement for the next 2 centuries." The Bear Man, surnamed Zhang, given the name Xiong, with the courtesy name of Xiaohua, hails from Day in Hubei. A prodigy, he is the youngest researcher at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, having participated in the construction of the nation's particle collider at the tender age of 18. This experiment has received the green light from superiors, allowing Zhang Xiong to observe the particle collision up close. Note, the particle collider, when operating at high speeds, may produce a black hole. 10, 9, 8, 7, 2, 1, initiate collision. ZZZZ. ZZZZ. Crackle. ZZZZ. Boom. A singularity materializes at the center of the laboratory, expanding rapidly. A small black hole appears imminent, and humanity's doom may be at hand. However, at that moment, a voice crackles through the intercom outside the lab, calm and commanding, "Immediately direct a burst of particles toward my location." As the operators hesitate, the supervising leader urgently orders, "Follow his instructions at once. Otherwise, we are all doomed." In silence, particles are launched toward Zhang Xiong. But for him, it is too late. He too is drawn into the black hole. As the particles enter the black hole, which is swelled to the size of a car, it ceases its expansion and transforms into a pale blue sphere of light. After an interminable silence, the multitude of researchers outside the isolation lab erupts into thunderous applause. This blue sphere signifies stellar energy that will henceforth be harnessed for our use. The door to the age of space exploration has swung wide open, beckoning us into the infinite cosmos. The following day, the People's Daily headlines read, "Chinese civilization officially enters the space age as of yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Yet, in a nondescript corner of the paper, a note reads, "Yesterday at 2 o'clock, an employee of the Chinese Academy of Sciences perished in the line of duty." Thus begins the voyage into the world of ice and fire. Chapter 2. Where am I? As a farmer in the village of Kree, en route to Rosby, stretched his neck to gaze at the distant sky. He pondered how much of this year's harvest would go toward taxes when suddenly the sky darkened. No, to be precise, the sun vanished. In its place, a black void appeared, from which a beam of pure white light descended, an astonishing sight against the darkness. The farmers stood in stunned silence, dropping to their knees before the light, too fearful to lift their heads, while the cattle bellowed in terror, struggling against their tethers as if to break free. For a fleeting moment, it felt as though the world had come to an end. Eventually, as the sun returned to the sky, the white beam dissipated along with the black void. Only then did the farmers dare to rise, brushing the dirt from their sore knees. After fervent discussion, they decided to send a pair to investigate the area illuminated by the light. Selected for this task were an elder named Charles and a youth named Bolo. Upon their return, the two struggled to drag a fully naked, muscular man behind them. Upon closer inspection, the man's bronze skin shimmered with a golden hue, as though he were clad in a layer of metal. His strikingly handsome face, with its cleanly defined features, startled the farmers. Such a visage did not belong to any known race of the Seven Kingdoms, nor to any peoples of the known continents. Could he be a descendant of the seven gods? Indeed, surely he must be, for how else could the heavens have darkened so unexpectedly? Ah, praise the seven gods! Such a divine occurrence has graced us, the leading villager thought to himself. In reverence, the villagers carefully dressed the son of the gods in their finest garments, awaiting his awakening with utmost respect. Zhang Xiong felt as though he had experienced an extraordinarily long dream, wherein his body was disassembled into molecules, only to be reconstituted into a new form. When he finally opened his eyes, it was evening, and a group of peasants clad in coarse linen surrounded him. Upon noticing his awakening, the villagers knelt and began speaking a torrent of words that Zhang found difficult to comprehend. Groggily standing, he surveyed his surroundings, still disoriented. When he inadvertently lifted his gaze to the night sky, he was completely entranced. A third of the sky was occupied by the moon, and a tremor ran through his lips as realization dawned upon him. He had been drawn into a wormhole, the other end of which connected to a different planet, thus transporting him to this place. After managing to communicate roughly with the villagers, Zhang Xiong experienced a pang of frustration. The language spoken here bore a striking resemblance to ancient Latin from Earth, a fortunate twist of fate for him. However, his frustration deepened when he inquired about the name of this continent, and the villagers chorused in unison, Westeros. Indeed, it is that blood-soaked and dark continent from George R. Martin's renowned series, A Song of Ice and Fire. This revelation struck Zhang Xiong, who firmly disbelieved in the concept of transmigration, with an overwhelming force. Perhaps it was merely a coincidence of names. After all, the universe is vast, and being transported through a wormhole to an unfamiliar realm is not entirely inconceivable. Summoning his courage once more, Zhang Xiong inquired, "Pray tell, who is the current king?" Robert Baratheon I came to reply. A mouthful of blood surged forth, as Zhang Xiong now firmly believed he had indeed traversed into the narrative of A Song of Ice and Fire. As he continued to question, the village chief only heard the sound of gurgling emanating from Zhang Xiong's stomach. It turned out his belly was protesting, leading the chief to hastily summon the finest provisions from his caravan to offer to the divine guest. Initially intending to decline, Zhang Xiong, overwhelmed by the insistent protests of his stomach, unabashedly indulged in the feast laid before him. As night fell, Zhang Xiong tossed and turned, realizing that now that he had entered this world and appeared unable to return, he must strive to live well. Though uncertain whether the events of this world would unfold as penned by the old master, he recognized that should he encounter such scenarios, his greatest advantage lay in his knowledge of the plot. He had often lamented the capriciousness of fate in the world of the Song of Ice and Fire, where lives were as fragile as blades of grass. Thus, having arrived, he was determined to alter the destinies of the people within this realm. As the saying goes, having seen through the world's illusions, even the heavens grow old. Youth's folly is but a fleeting moment. Since he was here, if he did not carve out a significant existence for himself, claiming dominion and conquering the four corners of the world, he would be remiss as an earth dweller. The chaotic butterfly had already taken flight, yet none could predict its destination. The war drum of fate had begun to sound. Unbeknownst to Zhang Xiong, at that very afternoon of his arrival, Duke Tywin, sipping tea in Casterly Rock, was startled by the sudden darkness of the sky, causing him to shatter his teacup. Meanwhile, on Dragonstone, the seer Melisandre, engrossed in her divination, seemed to perceive something dreadful, tumbling to the ground in fright, murmuring, "The stars are awry. The dragon's pool is changing. The heavens are about to shift." Chapter 3. Am I a man of iron? After 5 days of exploration and acclimatization, Zhang Xiong, possessing a commendable command of language, was able to converse effortlessly with those around him. This proficiency only deepened the villagers' reverence for him, leading them to believe he was a divine being gracing their presence. And their demeanor grew increasingly respectful. This placed Zhang Xiong in a rather awkward position. He could hardly disclose that he hailed from a distant realm known as Earth. Moreover, even if he were to reveal such a truth, it would likely be met with disbelief, as they perceived the phenomenon of wormhole travel as a miraculous event, believing him to be a divine offspring. With no alternative, he resolved to maintain the facade of a divine entity for the time being, grateful for the villagers' life-saving kindness, knowing that time would be on his side. As for his name in this new world, Zhang Xiong decided to retain his former English name, Bel Zhang. Throughout the 5 days of adaptation, Bel discovered that the youth, Boro, who had rescued him, was an earnest and straightforward lad, with whom he found a remarkable rapport. Enthralled by Bel's extraordinary tale, Boro was utterly captivated by him. Consequently, Bel resolved to take Boro under his wing as the first member of his burgeoning influence in the realm of Westeros. To his delight, Bel also learned that the elderly man, Charles, who had aided him, was once a mercenary in his youth and had participated in the Battle of the Trident 15 years prior, possessing a wealth of combat knowledge. Now, having aged, he returned to the village to enjoy his twilight years. His current journey with the caravan was merely to assist Boro, the son of a friend. This revelation filled Bel with joy, as he had been concerned about his safety in this unfamiliar world, and Charles appeared to be a fortuitous gift from the heavens. Thus, emboldened by his divine persona, he shamelessly implored Charles to teach him the art of swordsmanship. Initially, Charles was reluctant, considering the potential dangers of instructing a divinely revered figure in a skill as perilous as swordplay. However, being an honest man, he found it difficult to resist the sweet entreaties of Bel. After persistent pleas, Charles begrudgingly acquiesced. Meanwhile, Boro, eager to learn swordsmanship himself, quickly joined them. After much persuasion from Bel, Charles ultimately agreed, though he cautioned Boro to exercise utmost care during their practice, lest he inadvertently harm the esteemed divine figure. In the ensuing days of training, both Charles and Boro were astounded by Bel's remarkable aptitude. His progress in swordsmanship was astonishingly swift, while Boro also possessed talent. His abilities paled in comparison to Bel's. In just a couple of days, Boro found himself unable to keep pace with Bel's prowess. This left Charles exhilarated, as he realized that his lifelong skills could finally be passed on to someone capable of elevating them further. Consequently, he dedicated himself even more fervently to the instruction of swordplay. During one of their practical training sessions, Charles, perhaps overly invested, inadvertently delivered a powerful downward strike towards Bel's head. In that moment, both men were taken aback, their hearts racing as they witnessed the wooden sword descending perilously close to Bel's crown. With a sharp crack, the wooden sword shattered, yet Bel's head remained unscathed, merely experiencing a slight discomfort, devoid of any swelling. At this moment, Bel finally realized that his body had undergone a remarkable transformation. It appeared to have become extraordinarily resilient following the metamorphosis through the wormhole. After numerous experiments with little Bolo, Bel mustered the courage to grasp an axe meant for chopping wood and struck it against his own arm, accompanied by a scream reminiscent of a slaughtered pig. The axe indeed proved effective. Following this incident, the villagers grew increasingly convinced of Bel's divine status. Out of gratitude, he took it upon himself to assist with various tasks within the group, repairing several damaged ox carts. During their journey, the villagers gradually embraced and cherished this approachable, albeit peculiarly handsome, divine figure. Thus, during the team's rest periods, Bel, Bolo, and old Charles engaged in swordsmanship training, leading to a monotonous yet fulfilling life, with Bel's skills advancing at an astonishing pace. However, the villagers expressed confusion regarding Bel's dedication to sword practice, believing it unnecessary in an era of peace. Bel smiled outwardly, claiming that a diverse skill set is never burdensome, while inwardly he thought, "You think you can wield a sword? Your entire family should learn to wield one." Deep down, Bel understood that although Westeros appeared peaceful and prosperous, hidden currents of turmoil ran beneath the surface. Without strength, one would be but a lamb awaiting slaughter in this dark land. Only by enhancing his own abilities and establishing his own influence could he ensure his survival in the impending chaos, protect those around him, and perhaps even offer a glimmer of hope to the common folk of this land. As the saying goes, a young man's ambition seeks to conquer the heavens, to sweep away the myriad phenomena, and to create a new era. Let us proceed, observe, and find joy in our journey. Chapter 4. Encounter with Cleggan's subordinates. 2 months later, a caravan laden with goods emerged from Rosby, with the village chief beaming as he surveyed the various necessities aboard the ox carts, confident that this time they had not erred. This divine figure not only possessed extraordinary wisdom and mechanical skills, but also a keen business acumen. The slogans he crafted at the market were not only simple and comprehensible, but also captivating. Moreover, the quality of the cotton and silk produced by the village was unexpectedly excellent, resulting in profits that multiplied several times over. This endeared the young divine figure to the chief, who wished he could bring Bel back to the village to serve as a financial administrator. Yet, being a divine being, how could he be retained? Thus, amid the admiration in his gaze lay a hint of melancholy, sending a chill down Bel's spine as he thought, "Goodness, could the chief be a bit too sentimental? I must tread carefully." Just as these thoughts crossed his mind, a commotion erupted within the caravan, accompanied by a flurry of chatter. "Oh dear, how unfortunate. How could this happen? Isn't this a time of peace? Where do these bandits come from?" These conversations sent a shiver down Bel's spine, prompting him to step forward to ascertain the situation. In the clearing ahead lay dozens of lifeless bodies, alongside charred remnants of burnt carts. Among the corpses were a few disheveled female bodies, their tragic fates heart-wrenching. Anyone with a modicum of compassion would find this scene unbearable. The stench of decay was not yet overwhelming, indicating that this atrocity had occurred within the last day. The village chief glanced at the grim sight, sighed deeply, and remarked, "Human hearts are made of flesh. In my view, we should bury them." Thus, the benevolent villagers silently set to work, digging several large pits into which they gently laid the bodies. At that moment, Barrow halted a villager, exclaiming, "Wait, this child seems to still have a breath of life." The crowd immediately gathered around, and upon careful examination, they discovered that the child's breathing was faint but present. Consequently, this child became the sole survivor of the massacre. After a night of tender care from the villagers, the child's breathing began to steady and ease. He appeared to be around 10 years old, and upon awakening, he wept, recounting how his parents had been brutally slain by bandits. The villagers were deeply sympathetic and took turns caring for him. However, the kindness of the villagers, who saved the child and buried the dead, slightly delayed their journey. Misfortune soon befell their small caravan of 50 farmers, which was making its way when suddenly, a troop of more than 20 soldiers appeared on the road ahead, advancing toward the carts. At that moment, Bel was in charge of the child, and curiously, the child's demeanor shifted to one of extreme anxiety upon seeing the soldiers, his face twisting into one on the verge of tears. Bel realized the gravity of the situation and rushed to cover the child's mouth just as he was about to scream. The child struggled briefly, then calmed slightly, tugging at Bel's arm and whispering, "It's them, those bandits. They killed my parents. They killed everyone." At this point, the child could say no more, reduced to soft sobs. Bel gasped in horror. As the soldiers drew nearer, he caught sight of the emblem on their banner, a black hound. In that instant, he grasped the truth. It was the forces of House Cleggan, notorious for their ruthless deeds in the world of ice and fire. A pang of anguish pierced Bel's heart as the horrific scene replayed in his mind, this time envisioning the lifeless forms of himself and the villagers. "No, I cannot allow such a fate to unfold." Countless thoughts raced through Bel's mind, and in the next moment, he sprinted to the village chief, relaying the child's account. Yet, the chief appeared utterly indifferent, dismissing Bel's concerns with the assertion that the child must have been mistaken. After all, House Cleggan was noble. How could they permit their soldiers to engage in such despicable acts? He insisted that he could handle the situation and urged Bel not to fret unnecessarily. This predicament compelled Bel to act hastily. He sought out Barrow and Charles to express his concerns. Upon hearing Bel's words, old Charles sensed that trouble was afoot. He instructed Bel and the other villagers, numbering over a dozen, to seize the wooden spears prepared on the ox carts, emphasizing the importance of remaining adaptable and exercising caution. As the fewer than 30 soldiers approached, the village chief signaled for everyone to halt. He commanded that a barrel of fine wine be brought down from the cart, and, with utmost reverence, he carried it towards the leader of the soldiers. The commanding soldier, however, made a beeline for the caravan, with the chief following closely behind, still cradling the barrel. After a considerable pause, the military leader finally came to a stop. The village chief promptly and respectfully presented the wine to the officer, stating, "Sir, we are humble villagers returning from Roby City to Lau village with some supplies. This barrel of wine is a token of our respect." and we hope you will allow us passage. We would be immensely grateful." The leading soldier squinted his grotesque, malevolent yellow eyes at the chief, nodded slightly. And just as the chief began to rejoice and prepare to issue the order to proceed, the soldier suddenly called out ominously, "Wait a moment." This caused Bel's heart to race once more. The soldier continued, "Did you come across the corpses of a merchant caravan on your way here?" The village chief replied, "Yes. We believed they had fallen victim to bandits, so we buried them." The soldier nodded slightly, a wicked grin spreading across his face, before abruptly drawing his sword and plunging it into the chief's heart, exclaiming, "I suspect you are the very bandits responsible for the murders. Someone surround them." The remaining 20 soldiers, grinning maliciously, encircled the 50 villagers, who quickly armed themselves with wooden spears and rudimentary weapons, loudly protesting their innocence while retreating towards the center of the caravan. The yellow-eyed soldier smirked again, then in a deceptively soft tone said, "I do not outright accuse you of being those bandits. I merely drew my sword to inspect it. It was your village chief who stumbled upon it, was it not?" At this moment, the soldiers joined in, shouting, "Indeed, indeed. We witnessed your aged chief collide with the captain's sword. How foolish." Ha! Barrow could no longer contain his fury and was about to charge forward when Bell restrained him. With fiery eyes and clenched fists, Bell declared, "Patience is crucial for our greater strategy. I, Bell, shall avenge the chief's death, but we must endure for now." Barrow nodded reluctantly and returned to the ranks. The yellow-eyed soldier then spoke once more, this time in a softer tone. "However, if you lay down your weapons and accompany me back to Herrenberg, cooperating with our investigation, I assure you that no harm will come to you." The villagers, hearing this, began to waver, for they were but farmers. If survival was within reach, what could they possibly refuse? As some villagers contemplated laying down their arms in surrender, a tender voice emanated from a cart. "Do not trust him. He is a deceiver. He spoke the same words to our caravan. Yet, as soon as we relinquished our weapons, he ordered his men to slaughter our fathers, mothers, and everyone else." The anguished cries of the surviving child revealed a horrifying truth, awakening the villagers who were on the brink of surrender. They swiftly redirected their weapons towards the officers and soldiers. Seeing his scheme unravel, the yellow-eyed sergeant furiously commanded, "Kill them." In an instant, over 20 trained soldiers thrust their spears into the surrounding villagers. The sound of piercing blades echoed, and nearly 1/3 of the farmers fell. The remaining villagers, emboldened by their numbers, soon realized that the balance of combatants had shifted dramatically. Farmers, after all, were merely farmers, and their lack of combat training became glaringly evident. Fear spread like wildfire, and many villagers wavered again, with an increasing number contemplating surrender. Just then, Bell abruptly leaped onto a cart and proclaimed loudly, "I have been cared for by all of you these past few days, and I now consider you as family. Can we allow our brothers to be slaughtered without resistance? No. We are farmers, tillers of the land, yet we are not beasts, not swine, not worthless creatures to be slaughtered at will. Our village chief was murdered by these villains, and they shamelessly deny it in our presence. When their treachery was unveiled, they sought to silence us with violence. Brothers, we cannot allow this to happen." Suddenly, the sound of 3 arrows striking Bell interrupted his speech, yet he remained unfazed. As the arrows ricocheted off him, he continued, "If you are men, then fight alongside me." The soldiers stood in stunned silence. The yellow-eyed sergeant had previously commanded that anyone who dared to speak out would be shot down. This time, however, he had miscalculated. Upon witnessing the fearless stance of their leader, the villagers erupted in fervor. A few impassioned men shouted, "Yes, we have the divine son. The divine son is invincible. Charge." The remaining villagers, inspired, echoed, "The divine son is invincible." Fueled by their grief over the chief's death and their hatred for the yellow-eyed sergeant, their morale surged. At that moment, Bell, no longer hesitating, seized a wooden sword and charged at the 20 or so soldiers. Behind him followed Barrow and Old Charles, trailed by more than 30 furious villagers. Chapter 5. In the name of the villagers. With their spirits elevated, the villagers' combat prowess surged. Yet it still paled in comparison to the trained soldiers. Fortunately, Bell's ironclad resolve and the surprise assault caught the soldiers off guard. However, after a time of fierce struggle, the soldiers gradually regained their footing, and the situation once again turned dire. Bell also noticed this and disregarded the obstruction posed by the 3 spear-wielding soldiers. Before anyone could react, he charged at the yellow-eyed soldier. The soldier, caught off guard, was unable to draw his sword before Bell pounced on him with the ferocity of a tiger. They grappled on the ground, but in close combat. The yellow-eyed soldier stood no chance against Bell, the enhanced Iron Man, and was swiftly subdued. as the yellow-eyed soldier was overpowered before the eyes of the onlookers. The morale of the soldiers plummeted once more, and their resolve to attack the villagers began to wane. At that moment, Bell recognized the opportune moment. He pressed the sword he had picked up against the yellow-eyed soldier's throat and commanded imperiously, "Order them to surrender." The yellow-eyed soldier, a cowardly noble accustomed to bullying the weak, was taken aback by such a threat. He trembled in fear and shouted for his men to lay down their arms. Before long, the 20 or so soldiers relinquished their weapons, allowing them to fall to the ground. In a sense, these soldiers were akin to dogs serving a master. When their master was cruel, they too became rabid, attacking indiscriminately. Regardless of their inherent nature, the wrongs they had committed were irreparable. Strangely, neither Bell, nor the worldly wise Charles, nor the surviving 30-odd villagers knew how to deal with these disarmed soldiers from Harrenburg. Bell understood that if they were released, it would only invite further pursuit by more troops. Yet, executing them felt too cruel, and the villagers might not have the heart to do so. As Bell pondered this conundrum, his gaze fell upon the villagers, who were weeping while clutching their deceased loved ones. Indeed, within this caravan, the villagers were either fathers and sons or brothers. The most distant among them were merely neighbors and friends. Now, in the span of a single hour, their kin and companions had perished before their eyes. How could they not weep? Lost in contemplation, Bell realized he was not a bloodthirsty individual. However, in the wake of this incident, a primal instinct within him was awakened, or perhaps it was a nerve that had been touched. Suddenly, he felt a surge of anger directed at the truths he had long been aware of. He understood the law of the jungle, yet after experiencing it himself, he found it utterly abhorrent. He recognized the complexities of human nature inclined toward malice, yet after witnessing it firsthand, he felt powerless to act against it. All these elements, previously concealed within the civilized society he had known, now thrived unabashedly in the sunlight of Westeros. In the midst of this fury over the disregard for human life, Bell felt a surge of strength, a primal vigor. If the heavens, in their indifference, would not mete out justice to the wicked, then let it be my hand that does so. I do not belong to this world, thus I am not bound by its laws. The injustices of this realm shall be brought to an end by me. With this resolve, Bell bent down and picked up the long sword that had fallen from the yellow-eyed soldier, drawing it forth. In the sunlight, the blade shimmered with a golden radiance. Bear had made up his mind and instructed Barlow to bring forth the yellow-eyed soldier. As he walked, the soldier boasted, "I am Buster Criggan, nephew of Mars Criggan and cousin to the illustrious Gregor Criggan. Have you, lowly peasants, ever contemplated that the offense of a commoner against a noble is punishable by death? Immediately return me to Hellenberg, and I shall spare your lives." Though his words suggested mercy, he had already resolved to torment these wretches to death once they delivered him back to Hellenberg. However, upon beholding the long sword in Bear's hand, Buster felt the chilling breath of death. He struggled and shouted, "You wretched beasts are unworthy to judge me. Release me, I command you." Bear replied calmly, "No, we do not intend to judge you. Your crimes are too profound for the privilege of judgment." He then instructed Barlow and another youth to force Buster to kneel upon the nearest stone. Raising his sword, Bear proclaimed, "In the name of the innocent slain, directly or indirectly, by Buster Criggan, I, the son of the 7 gods of Westeros, bestow upon this fiend the judgment of his malevolence." The gleaming sword descended with a resounding thud, severing the head from the body, and all the villagers knelt in reverence, repeatedly uttering, "Long live the 7 gods! Long live the son of the gods!" At that moment, the sunlight behind Bear illuminated him and his sword, casting a radiant glow. His already smooth skin reflected the light like a polished mirror, creating a dazzling spectacle in the twilight, reminiscent of a deity. Thus, under Bear's authority, the remaining 20 soldiers were sentenced to death and executed one by one. The villagers dug 2 large pits to inter the bodies, one for their own kin, the other for the soldiers. In truth, Bear had hesitated for quite some time before deciding to eliminate the remaining soldiers, ultimately concluding that leaving them alive posed a significant threat. After stripping them of their armor and confiscating their weapons, these soldiers, stained with the blood of villagers, were consigned to the depths of hell. What transpired thereafter weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Bear spent an entire night elucidating to the simple villagers that this ordeal was far from over. Should Gregor Criggan, Buster's cousin, discover the demise of his underling, he would surely rally forces for revenge. Therefore, the villagers could not return home with the ox cart, at least not for the time being. Doing so would expose the village's whereabouts to that formidable villain and lead to further casualties among the villagers. Several among them, aware of Gregor's notorious reputation, concurred with Bear's assessment. Thus, the pressing question arose, What path should the caravan and the remaining villagers pursue? Bear, having contemplated this matter, expressed his willingness to lead the caravan and transform it into a trading expedition. They would first venture out to earn a living and, once the storm had settled, allow the villagers to return home. Due to the demise of the village chief at the hands of Buster, the caravan now found itself without leadership. Coupled with Bel's identity as a divine child and the favorable impression he had garnered from the villagers over the past month, the majority of them acquiesced to his proposal. With only a few opting to return home, Bel did not impede their decision, allowing them to take ample provisions for their journey back to the village. Consequently, the remaining villagers naturally became the inaugural force of Bel upon his arrival in Westeros. Chapter 6. The establishment of the Florine caravan one day prior. Before a wall of stacked corpses, Bel stood in solemn contemplation. When the villagers sought his permission to bury the dead, he drew forth the long sword bestowed upon him by Buster, which Charles had informed him was made of Valyrian steel, and proclaimed, "In the name of this unbreakable Valyrian steel, I, the Unsullied, the son of Destiny, Bel Xiong, hereby swear, I shall personally avenge the fallen villagers against Gregor Clegane. This oath shall take effect from this day forth until my final breath." The villagers, taken aback by his fervor, fell to their knees in reverence. As Bel gradually distanced himself, he casually remarked, "Bury them," further deepening the villagers towards him. In truth, the awkwardly departing Bel mused to himself, "Is it too much to ask for a little decorum in this moment of melodrama?" Now, under Bel's diligent orchestration, the nascent form of a caravan had begun to take shape. However, two pressing dilemmas soon emerged: the naming of the caravan and the nature of its wares. The name of a caravan serves as its brand, necessitating an air of sophistication, while the goods offered would determine the quality of life and remuneration of its members. Our compatriot Bel asserted that he was thoroughly prepared. They would sell what he termed fresh goods, and the caravan would be grandly christened Flooring. After a night of contemplation and experimentation, Bel introduced a revolutionary invention, a simple refrigerator. He filled a cart with copious amounts of clean water and constructed a space support with bricks at the center of the water, placing a basket of goods atop the support, finally covering the entire cart with a cloth. This invention, a product of ancient wisdom from the northwest caverns of the Celestial Empire, though entirely unrelated to Flooring, utilized the principle of water vaporization to absorb heat, preserving the freshness of the goods without direct contact with the water. The name Flooring for the caravan was merely a whimsical fancy of Bel's at that moment. Thus, the illustrious trading journey of our merchant, Bel Xiong, officially commenced. The Flooring caravan first set its sights on the city of Travel Rest, selling the goods originally acquired in Rosby along the way. Under Bel's fervent insistence and a degree of intimidation, all members of the caravan were compelled to practice swordsmanship with Old Charles, the rationale being to prevent encounters with brigands akin to the yellow-eyed soldiers they had previously faced. Due to the losses suffered by the villagers in the previous battle and the departure of a few, the armor stripped from the soldiers was barely sufficient for all members of the caravan, excluding the captain. Thus, Bel generously declared himself invulnerable, deciding that the armor should be bestowed upon others. His selflessness once again moved the entire caravan, though in truth, it was merely his mild aversion to wearing garments previously donned by the deceased that motivated this decision. Under Bel's guidance, the entire caravan was maintained in a half-military, half-mercantile fashion. Upon reaching the city of Summerhall, Bel eschewed the high-profit goods favored by other caravans, deeming them too costly and difficult to resell. Instead, our erudite Bel led his companions to the seaside to purchase fish from the local fishermen, astonishing the entire team by spending nearly all their possessions on the remarkably cheap seafood. However, due to Bel's esteemed reputation, few dared to voice dissent. Only Barrow kindly reminded him, to which Bel responded with a mysterious smile, assuring him there was no need for concern. Resigned, Barrow returned to the ranks. As Bel ultimately revealed their destination to be Summerhall, the caravan members' doubts reached a crescendo. They questioned whether the so-called Son of God was indeed capable of conducting business, and speculated on the wisdom of their leader, fearing that the lengthy journey would result in spoiled fish. Yet, Bel remained steadfast, proclaiming that as long as they believed in him, he would lead them to great fortune. Such fervent assurances quelled their anxieties, and they set off amidst a cloud of skepticism. Days turned into 10, and upon their arrival at Summerhall, the fish showed no signs of decay. Given that Summerhall is an inland city with limited access to fresh seafood, the fluorocarbon caravan managed to achieve a staggering profit, earning the team members smiles that could scarcely be contained. This success only deepened their reverence for their enigmatic leader. Eventually, swayed by the enthusiastic pleas of his team, Bel reluctantly commissioned a top-quality suit of armor from the finest blacksmith in the region, using part of their newfound wealth. He also sent a substantial sum back to the village. Even after these expenditures, the caravan's assets had more than tripled from their original amount. Bel then embarked on a vigorous procurement of fruits from the surrounding villages, intending to transport them to Stone Dance City. During this undertaking, he learned of the impending northward journey of King Robert Baratheon, set to commence next month. Bel realized that he had officially entered the narrative of a song of ice and fire. He understood that he must rapidly evolve to possess the capacity to alter the fates of the characters woven into this tale, as well as the destinies of the beings inhabiting this land. Early on in his tenure as caravan leader, Bel had instructed his team to keep his identity as the Son of God confidential, even going so far as to intimidate them with tales of misfortune befalling those who would betray this secret, thus ensuring the safety of his true identity. After selling all the fruits purchased from the summer hall at Stone Dance City, Bel received an invitation from Lord Geraint Mullendole to dine together and enjoy a post-dinner dance performance. Upon seeing the invitation, Bel revealed a contemplative smile, thinking, at long last, the big fish has taken the bait. After reaping substantial profits, there are always prying eyes directed toward him. What he intends to do is to seize the opportunity. Those who are avaricious and love wealth will take what they desire, while he can still profit from them. What he needs is precisely what those individuals currently possess in abundance. If the flow of interest can facilitate his rise in power, why should Bel hesitate to part with what he considers trifling riches? As the saying goes, I am endowed with talents that must find their use. Wealth squandered shall return again. Chapter 7. The Low-Key Knights Recruitment. Wagner Village, a secluded hamlet nestled in the mountains to the north of Deerhorn Town, was once inhabited by villagers leading a life of poverty and simplicity. However, after the villagers' caravan encountered bandits and was saved by an eastern noble, the caravan transformed into a trade convoy, bringing prosperity to the villagers of Wagner. The members of the trade convoy sent letters and bags of gold back home, stirring excitement among the villagers. Eventually, Bel, the leader of the trade convoy, sent several members back to the village to recruit individuals, igniting a fervor to leave the village. Yet, as the recruitment was limited to only 100 positions, many villagers remained dissatisfied. However, the subsequent events left the remaining villagers astounded. The returning leader presented several bags of gold dragons and announced that the village would soon be fortified with walls, watchtowers, and a series of militarized structures. Each villager participating in the construction would receive no less than 1 gold dragon as compensation each month. This revelation sent the villagers of Wagner into a frenzy, as they eagerly engaged in the construction of their village. Unbeknownst to them, within a few months, Wagner Village would transform into a veritable stronghold, with villagers compelled to partake in militarized training. Of course, that is a tale for another time. After reaping significant profits from the trade convoy, Bel no longer fretted over financial matters. However, his identity had become a considerable predicament. The trade convoy publicly proclaimed him as an Eastern noble who had journeyed from across the distant seas. While this identity seemed to pose no major issues in the realm of Westeros, where nobility and royalty are revered, his status as a counterfeit Eastern noble would render it exceedingly difficult for him to engage in the unfolding saga of ice and fire. His foremost objective now was to swiftly obtain the title of knight, for in Westeros, knighthood is not hereditary. Consequently, the lords of Westeros have relaxed their standards for knightly designation, allowing even commoners to attain this title through diligent effort. Bel understood with utmost clarity that in such a dark medieval world, only upon acquiring the title of knight did he attain the right to partake in the grand chess game of Westeros. However, Bel was a merchant, and throughout history, nobility has harbored a profound disdain for granting titles to merchants. Westeros was no exception. Consequently, in Bel's scheming, he concluded that the Lord of Stone Dance Castle must transition swiftly from a state of intense anger to one of profound astonishment, thereby instilling within him a subconscious fear. Only when that fear took root could he possibly acquiesce to the request of a complete stranger to be elevated to knighthood. Thus, clad in an ebony robe and hood, Bel attended the banquet. In the dimly lit hall of Stone Dance Castle, Sir Merlondel was somewhat obsequiously pouring wine for Bel, following an initial discord. Their negotiations proceeded with remarkable fluidity. Bel successfully convinced Geraint that he was indeed a nobleman from the distant east, willing to invest substantial sums in Geraint's numerous enterprises to secure a knightly title. Such a fortuitous opportunity, akin to a pie falling from the sky, was too enticing to resist. Consequently, the two engaged in lively conversation, with Geraint unconsciously refilling Bel's cup. As the feast progressed and the wine flowed freely, Bell casually presented a contract and inquired of Jaren, "My merchant caravan is rather sizable. Without military protection, it is vulnerable to banditry. Therefore, my lord, could you provide me with a contingent of 50 guards to safeguard my convoy?" A slightly inebriated Jaren agreed without hesitation, prompting Bell to seize the moment and add, "Then, regarding the selection of these individuals, do not worry, I will draw men from my personal guard for you." "No, that would place you in a difficult position, my lord. I would prefer to select from my own subordinates," Bell replied. Jaren, without further deliberation, simply grunted his assent. The banquet concluded on a note of joy and satisfaction as both Bell and Jaren simultaneously signed the agreement. Meanwhile, as Bell and Jaren engaged in their festivities, Barlow and Old Charles were conversing with Jaren's guards, casually gathering information about their backgrounds and characters without arousing suspicion. The following day, a list was presented to Bell. After careful contemplation, he compiled a roster of 50 individuals. His criteria for selection were straightforward, those of humble origins, honest and loyal commoners. Bell did not place much importance on martial prowess, as the world of ice and fire was replete with skilled warriors, yet true loyalty was a rare gem, often lost to time. While martial skills could be honed, character and loyalty were intrinsic traits that rarely changed. Thus, when Bell submitted the list to Sir Merlondel, the knight reviewed it and, without a moment's hesitation, concurred with his choices. Due to the absence of formidable warriors and trusted confidants on Bell's list, Jelen promptly sold the 50 individuals to him, thinking he had saved a significant amount of provisions. From Stone Dance City to Grass Hall, then to Coppergate City, Fallingwood City, and Tungshire City, ultimately reaching Roby's City. Although the lords of these cities differed, their insatiable thirst for profit remained constant. Thus, Bell tailored his investments accordingly, bestowing substantial capital upon each city while allowing the local lords to partake in the spoils after every lucrative venture, all under the pretext of requiring modest armies to safeguard trade caravans. Unbeknownst to them, the lords of Westeros collectively lost nearly 600 soldiers. Eventually, in a remote mountain stronghold north of Hornhill, 600 fully armed soldiers appeared overnight. This transformation occurred quietly, as the soldiers, mostly honest folk, were assisted by the villagers in relocating their families to the stronghold. Gradually, these honest men integrated into the community, becoming the stuff of legends. At last, on a day of trade, Bell heard the news of King Robert Baratheon's impending journey north. A smile crept across his face, for he was prepared, awaiting merely the favorable winds. He divided his nearly 200-strong caravan into two parts, one entrusted to his most loyal commander, Bollo, to continue trading in the Riverlands, while he took the other toward the north. The legendary tale commenced from this juncture, and the world of ice and fire was set to embark on its true voyage. Chapter 8. Entering the North, King Road. A seemingly endless procession of wagons trudged slowly across the snow, as Bell, unexpectedly chosen by King Robert as a supplier of fresh fruits, leisurely sat in his cart. He had grown weary of the king's incessant inquiries about the freshness of the produce and the numerous overtures from House Lannister. The former compelled a response he wished to avoid, while the latter invited a silence he found impossible to breach. The moments spent alone in the cart were the most cherished of his day, free from concerns over royal payments or the deterioration of goods. For the cold northern weather and an advanced refrigeration device rendered the fruits as if they were nestled in a refrigerator. Everything was worry-free. He merely sat, gazing at the distant sky, clearing his mind of all thoughts. At last, the caravan entered the renowned Winterfell. As a merchant, Bell swiftly dispatched a considerable workforce to procure the North's wolf and fox pelts, even seeking the precious marten fur from the south. As he anticipated, in the north, these furs could be acquired at a fraction of the cost, nearly 1/5 of their southern price. He realized that this venture would yield a bountiful harvest. Next came the introductions between the two parties. When the king formally introduced Bale to the Guardian of the North, Ned Stark, there was no trace of the astonishment typically displayed by those meeting him for the first time. The frostbitten Guardian merely raised an eyebrow and offered a courteous nod. Subsequently, Bale encountered several of Ned's children, and indeed, they were as described in the tomes. The precocious Robb, the demure Sansa, the whimsical Arya, the introspective Bran, the brave yet reserved Jon, and the young Rickon. Observing this harmonious family, Bale was momentarily lost in thought, pondering the inevitable disintegration of such bonds in the months to come. When war looms, how many families in Westeros, like theirs, would be torn asunder? His purpose in this fate was not merely to save the Starks, but to strive to ensure that every family akin to Ned's would not be obliterated by the encroaching darkness. Bale understood he was no saint, yet if he were to merely seek comfort for himself, What difference would his arrival make in this world? It would be but a passage of time wasted. To exert oneself to the fullest, that is the attitude a man ought to embody. In Winterfell, that night, the feast prepared in honor of the king was unprecedentedly lively. As a knight, Bael was entitled to enter the hall and partake in the banquet. However, he chose not to step inside. Instead, he procured a whole chicken and a barrel of fine wine, taking his place among the attendants. When Jon, being persuaded to drink by the servants, spotted Bael, he seized his indulgence and nodded in acknowledgement. Just as Bael settled down, the procession of lords and guests passed by him. Observing Jon craning his neck to catch a glimpse, Bael couldn't help but smile at the sight of the boy, now beginning to sprout stubble, whose eyes sparkled with curiosity, an undeniable testament to his youth. As Ser Jaime walked past, Bael noticed Jon's face light up with admiration, prompting a chuckle that momentarily caught Jon off guard, leaving him to awkwardly scratch his head. Subsequently, when Brandon Stark greeted Jon, the two began to share drinks in earnest. During their convivial exchange, Bael noticed a shift in Jon's expression as he glanced beneath the table, his hand instinctively reaching for the honeyed roast chicken. Without hesitation, Bael offered him a drumstick, saying, "Let him eat his fill." Jon, caught in an awkward smile, replied, "This is my dire wolf, named Ghost." As Bael savored the chicken, he observed the quiet wolf, drawing his own conclusions. Just as Jon was about to continue boasting, he suddenly looked up in surprise. Uncle Benjen, a man clad in a deep velvet cloak, with a lean visage and leather boots, approached, nodding to Bael before saying, "Thank you, noble knight, for the fresh fruits you have provided for this feast. I hope it is not too presumptuous of me to inquire, do you possess the gift of magic? Such a great distance traveled, and yet, the fruits remain so vibrant. If that were the case, I might have long since perished in the marketplace of King's Landing, my lord. However, this remains a matter of commercial confidentiality, and I must beg your pardon for my inability to disclose it. Yet, should you wish, I can provide certain fruits for the Night's Watch." No, esteemed knight. We of the Night's Watch have no leisure to indulge in such generous hospitality. In contrast, our gravest adversary at present is the increasingly bitter winter. What we truly require is sustenance and firewood. However, it seems to me that Lord Bael would not deign to bring such unprofitable items to the north. Bael smiled inwardly, recognizing that this Ban Yen was merely a wily old fox, unwilling to forge a deeper alliance due to uncertainty about my affiliations. Were he an ordinary merchant, he would have had nothing further to say, but I, Bael, am prepared. Thus, with a courteous bow, I replied, "I am indeed fortunate, for I have prepared some provisions for the Night's Watch. I had intended to discuss this privately after the banquet, but since you have inquired, I must speak candidly." Ban Yin was momentarily taken aback, clearly unprepared for Bael's genuine offer of goods, and reluctantly responded, "Then I am grateful to you, Sir Bael." At that moment, Jon, who had been quietly listening, suddenly stood and declared, "Uncle Ban Yin, I have decided to become a member of the Night's Watch. Please take me with you when you depart." Jon's proclamation shattered the somewhat awkward atmosphere, and Ban Yin's expression grew serious as he said to Bael, "My lord, I must step outside briefly with my nephew. We shall resume our discussion shortly." Bael smiled in understanding, watching as Ban Yin and Jon departed. After several rounds of drink, a servant approached Bael, informing him that King Robert wished to see him in the hall to meet Lord Eddard and Lady Stark. The hall in Winterfell was not opulent, yet it exuded a sense of ancient sanctity. At one end of the long table sat King Robert and Lady Stark, while at the other were Eddard and the Queen. The somewhat inebriated King Robert clutched a chicken leg, his face flushed, seemingly embroiled in a debate. Upon noticing Bael's arrival, he boisterously exclaimed, "Look! The knight who provides us with fruits and wine has arrived. He is a knight, a merchant, but to me, he is a warrior capable of contesting with Ser Jaime for 50 rounds without faltering. Come, Ned, my old friend, can you discern his origins? No, my brother. You would never guess. He is a nobleman who has journeyed across the sea from the distant east. Come, let us raise a toast to our noble knight Bael." The sound of clay cups clinking together reverberated through the hall. One could observe King Robert, with his broad belly and corpulent figure, and it was difficult to reconcile this image with the valorous warrior once hailed as the mightiest knight in the Seven Kingdoms, known as the Devil of the Trident. He now embodied the middle-aged crisis of a man consumed by indulgence. Bael bowed slightly and remarked, "I am humbled by your kind words, my lord. In Westeros, I am but an obscure knight, wandering to earn a modest living. Compared to the esteemed lords gathered here, I am far busier and dare not claim the title of noble. I beg your pardon for any amusement I have caused." Robb waved his hand and said, "Sir Bael, you should know that I am not one to be stingy with friends. You have provided such great conveniences to the royal family. Speak, what is it that you desire? My king, Bael replied humbly, the expenses for fruits and wines have already been settled by your treasury. I am but a modest man. If I must request a reward, I would ask your majesty for but a cup of wine. Robb laughed heartily, clapping his hands in approval, and commanded that his wine goblet be handed to Bael. Bael felt an intense disdain within. Bael drank deeply from the cup and then bowed to King Robb, saying, Generous Majesty, I thank you for your wine. In gratitude for your kindness, I shall present you with a gift. He then had a leather chest brought forth and opened it before Robb and the assembly. At the moment the chest was unveiled, a collective gasp arose. Inside lay a complete set of glassware, the value of which could purchase a small city in Westeros. Given the current market prices, under the astonished gazes of all present, Bael handed the chest to Robb. The king, usually lost in the pleasures of drink, found his senses sharpened. His expression darkened as he stroked the glassware, turning cold as he looked at Bael and said, Sir Bael, your gift is exceedingly precious. Are you certain you wish to bestow it upon the crown? Without hesitation, Bael nodded. This is a gift from the eastern nobility, even across the seas. In the distant Tang, it is an exceedingly valuable offering. Thus, I present it to you, my majesty. Please cherish it. I shall take my leave. As Bael turned to exit the hall, Robb called out, Sir Bael, please stay. By the name of the King of the Seven Kingdoms, the son of the god of war, I, Rob Baratheon I, formally bestow upon you the title of Viscount. Please accept this honor. Bael knelt on one knee before Robb, who drew his sword and tapped each of Bael's shoulders thrice, reciting the oath of fealty. Bael, familiar with the words, recited the familiar passage in return. That night marked the first evening of Robb's arrival in Winterfell, an ordinary night in the realm of Westeros. Yet, in retrospect, it was a night of historic significance, for it was the night when the greatest knight of the Seven Kingdoms was granted the title of Viscount, heralding the beginning of his legendary journey. Once Robb and Bael completed their vows, nearly all the nobles present rose, drawing their swords and calling out in cheers, Viscount of Glass, Viscount of Glass. Almost everyone came forth to congratulate Bael. Why almost? Because at the other end, King Robb's gaze was fixed calmly upon Bael, observing intently. Noticing that Bael's expression bore no signs of arrogance or cunning, he smiled slightly, stood, and softly remarked, an intriguing man. He then joined the throng congratulating Bael. Did Ned Stark find Bael intriguing? Chapter 9. Some imperative matters. After finally escaping the hall of Winterfell, where countless burly men had been pouring drinks, the clock struck midnight. A slightly inebriated Bael was preparing to return to the inn when he noticed a figure in the training yard, vigorously wielding a wooden sword. It was a slender, not particularly tall figure, yet imbued with unwavering resolve. As Bael approached, he discerned that it was indeed Jon, the obstinate boy who must have been stewing over the little imp's eloquent discourse. Suddenly, Bael spoke up, that sword is inadequate. Use mine. Jon glanced back at Bael, a sheepish expression crossing his face. Bael cleared his throat awkwardly, unsheathed his Valyrian steel sword, and handed it to Jon, saying, Those who temper you will ultimately forge you into a fine blade. Jon bowed his head, toying with the Valyrian steel sword, ensconced in silence for a considerable time. Do you like it? Bael inquired. Jon nodded. Very well, if you are willing to become my squire, this Valyrian steel sword shall be yours. Jon remained silent, prompting Bael to continue. After 2 or 3 years as my squire, you may be knighted. Thus, you will evolve into a man capable of standing on his own. After a lengthy pause, as if having made a momentous decision, Jon returned the sword to Bael and said, The little imp is right. I am but a bastard. Even if I become a knight, the truth of my illegitimacy will remain unchanged. My title shall likely become that of Lord Eddard Stark's bastard knight. Only at the wall, there I shall not be a bastard. I will be one among brothers. Moreover, I have promised Uncle Benjen that I will become a night's watchman. Bael gazed at Jon, sighing internally. Though the boy exhibited a semblance of cowardice, his tenacity was formidable, his temperament strikingly akin to that of Eddard. Resigned, Bael retracted the sword, saying, In that case, where you are headed, someone will bestow upon you an even finer weapon. With that, he slipped away before Jon could express his confusion. Reflecting as he walked, indeed, the protagonist is not someone easily swayed. Ultimately, Bael returned to the inn alone and fell asleep. Author's note, at this moment, Jon is 14 years old, an optimal age for becoming a squire. The day before the king's descent, which coincided with the day of the hunt, Bael rose early. Having received an invitation to partake in today's hunting expedition beyond the city, the party had likely already departed, yet Bael wandered aimlessly through the chilly streets of Winterfell. His reason for abandoning the king was to rescue someone. More precisely, a child, a boy who could have become a warrior. Indeed, the future three-eyed raven, Bran. As for why he felt compelled to save a boy with whom he had barely exchanged a glance, perhaps even Bael himself could not elucidate. He is not a self-righteous saint. He is merely an ordinary individual who believes that if he is aware of the unfolding narrative yet chooses not to save the innocent, he will forever be unable to reconcile with his own conscience. Indeed, it is as simple as that. Bael, in his past life, was a person of profound respect for his own inner peace, and thus, in this life, he will only act in accordance with that very peace. If he cannot rescue even a single vulnerable soul, how could he possibly fulfill his aspiration to safeguard countless lives? Atop the tower, the man turned to gaze at the woman. Reflect deeply on what I have done for love, he reluctantly stated, before forcefully pushing Bran outward. Bran screamed as he soared out of the window, suspended in midair. This time, there was nothing to grasp. In the distance, a lone wolf howled. Above the crumbling tower, crows circled, still awaiting their offering. Yet, a large hand emerged, lifting the boy from the shadow of the crows, shattering the oppressive silence. Jaime cast Bran from the tower and then turned towards Cersei, shrugging under her peculiar gaze, and remarked, "What else could I possibly do?" Cersei remained silent, pointing in terror at Jaime's back. There, a large adult hand reached up, gripping the crumbling stones of the tower. Jaime swiftly drew his sword, with a fierce shout. A fully armored knight leapt up, cradling a trembling boy in his left arm. The knight set the child down and instructed, "Quickly, go find Lord Ned and bring him back to the tower with assistance." Bran nodded and hurried down the tower. All of this transpired within Jaime's line of sight. Upon witnessing Bran dash toward the Hall of Winterfell, Jaime finally reacted, raising his sword toward the knight before him, furiously declaring, "Do you seek death? Sir Bell, although you were recently elevated to a viscount, in the eyes of House Lannister, you remain merely a slightly larger insect. If you value your life, vacate the area and do not obstruct my path." Jaime harbored a certain respect for Bell's swordsmanship during their prior bout before the king, although Jaime emerged victorious. It had taken considerable time. He resolved to deal with this man before Ned arrived. Just as he prepared to strike, Bell interjected. Bowing to Cersei, he said, "My esteemed lady, I apologize for the interruption. Though we are strangers, I kindly ask that you depart first." Emphasizing the phrase, "I do not know you," he caught Jaime and Cersei off guard, and realization dawned upon them. Cersei swiftly gathered her scattered garments and exited the tower, while Jaime donned his attire and remarked to Bell, "You are wise to recognize the situation." Just as he was about to leave with Cersei, Bell called after him, "Sir Jaime, do you intend to depart so easily? I can pretend not to have witnessed your recent actions, but I cannot ignore your threats directed at me. As this somewhat larger insect, I wish to spar with you, a Lannister." Jaime watched Cersei walk away, then turned to Bael with a devilish grin, saying, "Sir Bael, I must concede your audacity and courage, but do you truly believe that after witnessing such events, the Lannister family will allow you to live for long?" Bael shrugged and replied with a smile, "Every life possesses the right to endure. Perhaps it is fraught with difficulty, yet how can one ascertain without making an attempt?" With that, he raised his sword once more. Jaime fixed his gaze upon Bael, contemplating for a long moment before uttering, "You are unlike us, Easterners. You are an intriguing individual. Had you not ventured to the ruined tower, we might have forged a friendship. However, since you have glimpsed that which should remain unseen, you cannot be permitted to survive. Prepare to meet your end." He then swung his sword towards Bael. Bael raised his sword to block the attack. Clang, clang, clang. Within the confines of the ruined tower, the only sounds were those of clashing steel, the sharp notes composing a thrilling symphony in the narrow space. The duel resembled a ballet, with both combatants feeling the strength of their opponent in each fierce exchange. After the final clash, they both stepped back 3 paces, staring at one another in astonishment. Jaime paused momentarily and remarked, "You have concealed your prowess, Lord Bael." Bael replied, "Have you not done the same, my Lord Lannister?" Just as they prepared to charge at each other once more, a booming voice thick with northern accent rang out, "Cease at once." A contingent of soldiers from the north swiftly surrounded them. Lord Eddard Stark led young Bran to stand before the two, inquiring, "What is the meaning of this?" Bael explained, "My Lord Stark, your son interrupted a private meeting between Sir Jaime and an unfamiliar lady, prompting Sir Jaime to take offense and threaten to cast your son from the tower. I happened to pass by and intervened to save him." "Humph, pass by? Do you share Bran's penchant for climbing towers?" Eddard quickly identified the flaw in Bael's statement. "My Lord Stark, in the East, a noble should not question one who has rescued his child in such a manner. I trust it is the same in the West." Eddard found himself momentarily speechless, suppressing his doubts. After a brief pause, he turned his attention to Jaime, saying, "Sir Jaime, you possess great audacity. Is Bale's account of events accurate?" Having felt a brief sense of relief upon hearing Bale's explanation, Jaime then faced Lord Eddard's scrutiny. He bowed respectfully, stating, "Esteemed Lord Eddard, I acted in haste, startling your son. Fortunately, Sir Bale's timely intervention ensured that your youngest remains unscathed. Let us consider this matter resolved." Even Bale felt a twinge of shame for Jaime's audacity. Eddard, clearly taken aback, fixed his cold, piercing gaze upon Jaime for an extended period before responding. "Very well, Sir Jaime, I accept your apology. However, Bran shall remain in the north and shall not go to King's Landing. You must explain this to Robert yourself. Furthermore, from the moment the Lannisters depart the north, the gates of Winterfell shall remain forever closed to you. I bid you farewell." Jaime turned to leave, casting a remark towards Ned. "The noble Duke of Winterfell, winter is coming, and I shall return to the warm south, never to tread upon the north again. You may remain in your frigid castle. Take care not to freeze your nose off. I will travel south with you, and will uncover the murderer of Jon Snow. When I do, I shall see to it that they face justice." Jaime paused, glancing back to say, "My Lord Ned, I am completely unaware of what you speak. At the very least, I can assure you with my integrity that the death of Jon Snow has nothing to do with the Lannister family. I wonder where you have heard such rumors. People can be quite fearsome, my Lord Ned." With that, he departed without a backward glance. Ned watched Jaime's retreating figure in silence for a long while, then turned to bow deeply to Bale, his expression sincere as he said, "Thank you, Lord Bale, for coming to the aid of my child. From this day forth, every gate of the north shall forever stand open to you. We shall honor you as the eternal guest of the north." Chapter 10. Certain Necessities in the North, Winterfell. Outside Bran's chamber, late at night, a shadowy figure stealthily traversed the snow, his gait resembling that of a common drunkard. He halted outside a pre-marked house, cautiously ascending the stairs, and slowly drew forth a dagger that was incongruous with his identity. Just as he prepared to push open the door, he felt a hand suddenly cover his mouth. Before he could cry out, darkness enveloped him, and he lost consciousness. The dagger was swiftly seized from his grasp. He could not fathom why the fire he had set was extinguished so quickly, unnoticed by others. Now, he had even sacrificed his own life. Reflecting on it, the sum he received from the Lord was far too meager. He would have earned more by selling the dagger. In the final moments of his life, the most heart-wrenching assassin in all of Westeros could think of nothing else. This unfortunate fellow was pitiful, having been thwarted multiple times by guards during the night in Winterfell, never causing an uproar. To assassinate someone and yet be intercepted before even entering the door. Ultimately, he did not even comprehend how he met his demise. The following morning, the earliest risers in Winterfell discovered a beggar frozen in the square. The beggar clutched a bottle of wine, his visage serene, as if he had never struggled before death. No one knew, and no one noticed. From that day forth, a dagger of exquisite Valyrian steel found its place at Bael's side. A few days later, the King's caravan finally set forth. Due to Bran's incident, a quarrel arose between Ned and Robert regarding Jaime's fate, delaying their departure for several days. Ultimately, after finding Jaime 100 golden dragons, the matter was left unresolved. Bale bid farewell to Ned's family. His merchant convoy was to journey to the Wall. Before leaving, Robert expressed deep reluctance at Bale's departure. "Damn it, Bale, must you go to such a frigid place? Take care not to freeze your little fellow while relieving yourself." Bale merely fixed a penetrating gaze upon Robert, a tactic learned from Ned, prompting Robert to cough several times before Bale finally withdrew his unsettling stare. Due to the numerous carts Bale had in tow, their journey to the Wall was exceptionally slow. Strangely, Bale was often absent from the convoy, departing at dawn and returning at dusk, leaving others to wonder about his whereabouts. Jon and Tyrion occasionally inquired about Bale's activities among the convoy members, only to discover that even the merchants were perplexed by his endeavors. One day, under the watchful eyes of the onlookers, Bale returned to the camp astride a magnificent steed, flanked by 2 children and followed by a wolf. The crowd gasped in astonishment as Jon exclaimed, "Arya, what brings you here?" Upon noticing the other child, Mike, he added, "And you, what are you doing here?" Bale calmly explained, "Jon, please remain composed. Your sister's wolf bit a prince, and during its escape, it fortuitously encountered me. I intended to return her, but she insisted on bringing this young lad here first." Turning to Banyan, he continued, "Brother Banyan, it seems this lad cannot return. To safeguard him from the Queen's men, I propose he join the Night's Watch. Do you have any objections?" Banyan, observing the robust Mike, after all, he was the butcher's son, nodded in agreement. Bale then addressed John, saying, "John, this little brother of mine will be joining you. Please take good care of him at the wall." John, at a loss for words, simply nodded in acceptance. He lifted Arya down from the horse, spun her around before gently setting her down, and thought, what trouble this will cause. He playfully flicked Arya's forehead and affectionately stroked her cheek. Turning to Bale, he inquired, "What are your plans, my lord? What to do?" "Naturally, we must return our little princess home, but first, let us provide her with a meal, as she must be famished." After ensuring Arya was fed, with Bale's assistance, she tethered Nymeria to one of the carts in Bale's convoy. After exchanging heartfelt words with her wolf, Arya mounted Bale's horse, and together they raced toward the king's camp. Along the way, Bale was continuously reminded to treat Nymeria well. He assured them that with the presence of Ghost, Nymeria would surely come to accept the change in her master. Although Arya was reluctant, she had no choice but to accept her separation from the wolf. At the king's camp, "My lord, we have found her," announced a servant. Ned immediately stood. "Was it our men or the Lannisters who located her?" "Neither. It was found by Lord Bale," replied the steward. "Vaonpol, the young lady has not been harmed." "Thank the heavens," Ned responded. "His men have been searching for Arya for 2 days, while the queen's forces have also been dispatched." "Where is he?" "Have someone summon him immediately." "My lord, I regret to inform you," Poole explained, "the guards are from House Lannister." When Lord Bale brought her in, they promptly alerted the queen. Consequently, a confrontation ensued between Lord Bale and the Lannister men. "That woman is insufferable." Ned strode purposefully towards the entrance, only to collide with the approaching Ser Bale. Without hesitation, he took Arya into his arms. "My Lord Bale, House Stark owes you yet another debt of gratitude," he exclaimed, immediately turning to his daughter to inquire, "Are you injured?" "No, my Lord Bale took excellent care of me and even treated me to a meal." "Oh, and I saw John and Nymeria," Arya replied with a hint of excitement. Ned cast a grateful glance towards Bale when the steward interjected, "My lord, His Majesty requires your presence in the tent." Ned turned to Bale and asked, "Would you accompany me to the main tent?" Thus, Bale and Ned, with Arya in tow, made their way to the encampment. After recounting the events of Arya's discovery, Bale endured a lengthy tirade of Joffrey's deceit, Arya's furious screams, and the queen's piercing rebukes. Just as he was about to exit the tent out of boredom, the queen's command echoed, "Skin the dire wolf." A bounty of 100 golden dragons. It seemed Bale suddenly recalled something, turning back to Ned. After hearing Robert's curses and Sansa's sobs, Ned declared, "Robert, you must take responsibility for your actions." Robert gazed vacantly at Ned. At that moment, Bale interjected, "Duke Ned, King Robert, I can slay the wolf, but I require the promised 100 golden dragons first. I do not trust the Lannisters." With a wink towards Ned, he added levity to the tension. Amidst Robert's mutterings, Bale sensed the disdainful gazes of those around him, and he chuckled, calling out, "Where are my 100 golden dragons, my queen?" Cersei, clearly eager to avoid further confrontation with Bale, soon dispatched the promised bounty to him. In the midst of Ned's displeasure, Bale inquired, "My lord, where is the dire wolf?" Ned led Bale out of the tent, his expression as cold as ice. Bale understood that had it not been for his 2 rescues of Ned's children, the latter would have surely voiced his ire. They arrived at the location of the dire wolf, and Bale unsheathed his Valyrian steel sword, severing the chains beside the small wolf under Ned's furious gaze. As he swung, he feigned a slip, apologizing, "Oops." Once the chains were broken, Bale swiftly scooped up the small wolf, leaping onto the waiting horse, and galloped away, shouting, "Duke Ned, tell that wretched queen she has been outsmarted." "Ha ha." Like a gust of wind, he departed. Ned stood in stunned silence, a rare smile breaking across his icy features. "Ha ha. Ha ha ha." He chuckled, then turned to the Lannister soldiers racing towards the tent, bellowing, "Inform everyone that regardless of Ser Bale's wishes, he shall become the Lord of Deepwood Motte, and will forever have a place in Winterfell." Unbeknownst to Bale, who was fleeing with the dire wolf in his arms, he had attained a status once deemed unattainable, lordship. Chapter 11. The butterfly effect. Jon perceived Bale as remarkably impressive, at least in his eyes. Bale was the only stranger who could leave with a dire wolf without suffering a bite. "Lady, woo, it's too hard. I can't bite it at all." Rumor has it that the esteemed Viscount publicly berated the queen as a harlot. Observing the playful interaction between Nymeria and Lady Bai Ling, Jon felt a surge of joy. At the very least, Bai Ling had companionship. As for himself, Jon was equally delighted to have gained a new ally. He glanced at the man responsible for this turn of events, Belle, who appeared to be engaged in conversation with a little demon. The little demon's sharp laughter pierced the air, leaving Belle somewhat uncomfortable. One could easily imagine the expression on his sister's face upon hearing such news. The little demon continued, advising him to exercise caution, reminding him that the Lannisters always pay their debts. Cersei would undoubtedly not let him off lightly. After hearing this, Bell smiled politely, but chose not to respond further. Days later, Bell and his entourage finally reached the wall. Standing beneath the towering 50-meter walls, Bell was acutely aware of his own insignificance. But could this wall truly withstand the White Walkers? Perhaps only time would reveal the answer. As the caravan slowly entered Castle Black, the team began to unload their cargo before the night's watch. Boxes of goods were laid out before them. The sheer quantity and quality of food, cured meats, and timber astonished Banyong, nearly causing his jaw to drop. Due to Bell's unique method of compression, the actual volume of goods in each box was equivalent to 3 times that of a standard cargo box, far exceeding Banyang's initial estimates. Amidst Banyang's astonished gaze, Bell impudently declared, "Payment." Banyong stared blankly for a moment before reluctantly replying, "I cannot afford it." Bell mused to himself, "This man is as straightforward as Ned. Too blunt for his own good. If I knew you could pay, I wouldn't have come here." After venting his frustration, Bell donned an understanding expression and regretfully said, "Dear Lord Banyong, our caravan accepts not only cash, but also barter." Banyong shook his head again, saying, "Viscount, do you truly believe that in this impoverished land we could offer you anything of value in exchange?" Bell feigned a troubled expression, stating, "Lord Banyong, you must know I have just been granted the title of Viscount. As you can see, I have offended the Lannister family for the sake of the lady, and now I lack even the most basic self-defense troops. Moreover, I have heard that the wall is in dire need of supplies, yet weapons abound. Therefore, I require the surplus weapons of the Night's Watch for my own protection." After considerable deliberation, the elders ultimately agreed to Bell's proposal for an exchange of goods and weapons. Consequently, Bell's dozen carts of cargo were traded for 400 suits of armor and nearly 800 weapons from the wall. Perhaps Banyong was unaware that his delays in negotiating with Bell, coupled with the time Bell had spent rescuing Arya at the outset of his journey, had led to a fateful misalignment with the upcoming ranger expedition beyond the wall, where death awaited. Thus, unbeknownst to Bell, Banyong narrowly escaped a grim fate, evading the destiny of becoming one of the undead. Eventually, Bell could no longer decline Banyang's invitation and settled in at the wall for a time. During this period, he imparted lessons in swordsmanship and basic combat techniques to the newly arrived youths. However, it appeared that Bell did not extend any particular care towards Jon. After all, a man truly flourishes only in the face of adversity. Bell was acutely aware that within the pages of Old Man Joe's writings, Jon would only emerge from the shadow of being a bastard after enduring relentless hardships, ultimately transforming into the revered king of the North. While Bell had no desire for Jon to ascend to such a throne, a competent commander of the Night's Watch was precisely what Bell required for the impending conflict. Similarly, after Bell thwarted Littlefinger's assassination attempt on Bran and shifted the blame onto Tyrion, Catelyn had no reason to venture south. Moreover, with Bran now in good health, she only needed to remain in Winterfell to care for her younger son, Rickon. Consequently, Tyrion should smoothly return to King's Landing, thus missing out on those thrilling and perilous adventures. Yet, it was evident that Bell harbored his own intentions. On their journey back alongside Tyrion, they revisited Winterfell, now under the stewardship of Robb as the acting lord. It was during this visit that Bell discovered, rather inexplicably, that he had become the Lord of Deepwood Motte, a revelation that left him both amused and perplexed. Despite Lord Ned's good intentions, all of his possessions were situated in the south. His inevitable journey southward rendered him incapable of managing Deepwood Motte in the short term. This maneuver provided the Lannisters with an impeccable justification for denying him land, which was deeply disheartening. Well, perhaps this was merely a fitting punishment for having seemingly exploited House Stark for 2 direwolves. As for Nymeria and Lady, one might wonder if Bell would still return them. After all, they were 2 fugitives, making it inconvenient for House Stark to publicly keep them. Thus, through negotiations with Robb and Lady Catelyn, Bell officially became the new master of Nymeria and Lady. Although the memories of their original owner remained indelible, they were still but pups. Under Bell's careful tutelage, they came to accept him as their master. After bidding farewell to the Starks of Winterfell, Bell commenced his subtle persuasion of the imp. The specifics of this endeavor shall remain untold, but the outcome was that Tyrion agreed to accompany Bell on a journey to the Vale of Arryn. Simultaneously, in the Dothraki Sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood alongside Ser Jorah Mormont, gazing upon the endless grasslands. Together, they stood atop a ridge, discussing the Dothraki myths that sent a shiver down Daenerys' spine. On Dragonstone, a weary Nymelia struggled to foresee the future, fervently praying to her Lord of Light for guidance, yet no response came after a prolonged silence. She had once glimpsed Stannis Baratheon crowned in the flames, but the vision had begun to fade. Hesitation crept in as she contemplated leaving Dragonstone to pursue the shadow she had seen in the fire. Ultimately, after much deliberation, she resolved to remain on the island she had so deftly manipulated, choosing to observe the unfolding events from her vantage point. As Jon Arryn concluded his power games with the court ministers today, he felt an overwhelming fatigue that rendered him almost speechless. Yet, he still managed to embrace his young daughter warmly, gently stroking her hair and patiently inquiring about Arya's day. Chapter 12. The Barbarians of the Eyrie. Although this unconventional force was indeed considerably weaker compared to other legions, it initially swept through the southern territories with remarkable prowess. Unfortunately, after being swayed by the Little Imp, they faced numerous setbacks, either aligning themselves with Lord Tywin or meeting their demise on the battlefield. Ultimately, they failed to achieve optimal utilization of their potential. How could our dear Lord Bael possibly overlook this army? Let us observe how he maneuvers them. In the valley, under the cover of night, I remarked, Bael, why have we ventured to this wretched place? Tyrion grumbled, I never intended for you, a Lannister lord, to accompany me up the mountain. You could have remained at the inn below and avoided all this trouble, Bael replied with a resigned smile. Originally, he had planned to ascend the mountain alone to meet this band of barbarians. But inadvertently rousing Tyrion from his slumber had left him with no choice but to bring him along. Listen, Lord Tyrion, I am aware that your relations with my elder siblings are rather strained. However, it is precisely for this reason that I must accompany you. Who knows? One day you might fall victim to an assassin sent by my sister. In that case, I could present your head to them and claim my reward. But if I were to perish in this valley, would that not fulfill your desires? No. What I mean is that I must witness it firsthand. Do you comprehend? Witness it firsthand. Bael shook his head with a wry smile. He had never bested this little imp in verbal sparring. Thus, he resorted to his ultimate strategy against him, silence. Indeed, this dwarf feared nothing else as much as the absence of response while he jested. After a prolonged silence, Tyrion, unable to endure the solitude any longer, once again attempted to steer the conversation. Well then, dear Sir Bael, why have you come to such a desolate and perilous locale? Bael replied coolly, you shall find out shortly. Following this, another lengthy silence ensued. Even beside the fire, the night felt eerily oppressive, with an entire sheep roasting over the flames. Just as Tyrion was about to break the silence again, Bael stopped him. Tyrion glanced around and realized they were encircled by a dozen shadowy figures. Is this what you wanted me to wait for, Lord Bael? A band of brigands? Bael nodded calmly. Tyrion rolled his eyes and said, I think we should focus on how to survive this situation. Without waiting for Bael to respond, Tyrion stood up, grasped Bael's hand, and proclaimed loudly, the night air is quite chilly. Why don't you all join us by the fire? He called out to the lurking figures. There is wine and meat here. All are welcome to partake in the roasted lamb. All actions came to a halt, and in the moonlight, Tyrion caught a glimpse of gleaming metal. This mountain belongs to us, came a deep, resolute, and unfriendly voice from the thicket. The lamb also belongs to us. Lamb is indeed yours, Tyrion concurred. Who are you? At the moment you ascend to meet your deity, another voice replied, tell him that it was Gonsur, the son of Gon from the Stone Crow tribe, who sent you. He pushed aside the underbrush and stepped into the light. The newcomer was slender, clad in horned armor, and wielding a hunting knife. Alongside him was Saga, the son of Doff. The first voice resonated, low and lethal. Suddenly, a massive stone shifted to their left, rising and transforming into a man. His physique was robust and imposing, though his movements appeared sluggish, draped in animal skins. With a wooden staff in his right hand and an axe in his left, he lumbered towards them, clashing the two weapons together with each heavy step. Others followed suit, announcing names, Khan, Torrik, Jagot, and several others that Bell could not recall completely, but there were over 10 in total. Some bore swords and daggers, while others wielded pitchforks, sickles, and spears hewn from wood. Before Tyrion could speak again, Bell rose, his splendid steel armor reflecting a bright, yet gentle glow in the moonlight, which left the group of savages in awe. I am Bell Zhang, a viscount personally appointed by King Robert, hailing from the distant east. And this is the second son of House Lannister, whose father is the protector of the West and Lord of Casterly Rock. We would be delighted to forge a friendship with you all. From the far east, Sir Zhang, what can you offer us? Asked the man named Gonsur, seemingly the leader of the group. Weapons, finely crafted iron arms, armor, plate armor like mine, and provisions, enough food to sustain your kin for a lifetime. However, in return, you must pay a price. What price? Gonsur inquired. Submission, Bell replied nonchalantly. Gonsur paused momentarily, then erupted in laughter. Submission? From you, a coward clad in iron? Khan. Fetch the horses, Gonsur commanded. Slay that Viscount and capture the half-man. We can make him milk for us and please the mother of his child. Bell unsheathed his Valyrian steel sword, interjecting before Tyrion could speak. Send forth your strongest 5 to face me. If you prevail, dispose of us as you wish. If we win, you shall consider my proposal. Gonsur and the others exchanged glances and nodded. Thus, Gonsur, Saga, Khan, Torrik, and Jaggot, these 5 savages stepped forward. As Bell raised his longsword, the battle was imminent. The 5 assailants charged directly at him, and Bell met their advance with his blade raised. Khan was the first to attack, but Bell sidestepped and delivered a swift kick to his rear, sending Khan tumbling far away. Then came Torrik and Jaggot, both brandishing their hunting knives. Bell horizontally blocked their assault with his longsword, then kicked one of them down, causing him to fall. As the blade from the 2 knives was forced against his sword, it angled sharply to rest against the neck of the other assailant. With a resounding thud, Bell struck the man's temple with his left fist, and he crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The fall of the 3 seemed to transpire in an instant. After exchanging a glance, Gonsur and Shaga charged forward simultaneously. Shaga brought down his wooden staff and axe upon Bell, who seized the opportune moment to thrust his longsword upwards, effortlessly cleaving the 2 weapons in half. Before Shaga could comprehend the situation, Bell evaded Gansur's hunting knife and collided with Shaga, sending the massive figure flying as if he were a mere child. Observing Gonsur standing alone, Bell provocatively remarked, "Strike me." Gonsur hesitated momentarily before swinging down with his inferior hunting knife, which left not a mark on Bell's steel plate armor. Bell swiftly seized the hunting knife from Gansur's grasp, inspected it, and with ease, snapped it in his bare hands. He then turned to the bewildered onlookers and declared, "Follow me, and I shall equip each of you with iron armor and a worthy blade." With that, he cast the broken knife aside. Consequently, both Gonsur and the 4 who had previously been knocked down, along with other onlookers, knelt on one knee, expressing their willingness to heed Lord Bell's commands. In unison, they proclaimed their allegiance. Meanwhile, Tyrion, standing off to the side, gazed at Bell's figure in a daze, feeling an inexplicable sense of loss, murmuring, "Brother, sister, I truly wonder what kind of adversary you have provoked." Chapter 13. Training the Savages. Returning to King's Landing, Baron Nestor Royce, the Knight of the Vale, smiled as he watched the retreating figures of Bell's caravan and the thousands of savages. He understood that the Vale would no longer suffer the devastation wrought by the wild men of the Moon Mountains. Almost all the indigenous inhabitants of the Moon Mountains had departed the Vale with the newly arrived Viscount and his trading party. These thousands of natives were not merely fierce warriors. In truth, fewer than half of them were fighters, while the rest consisted of the elderly, the weak, and women and children. Following that fateful night, Bell spent several days locating the leaders of all the clans in the Moon Mountains, successfully persuading them to follow him. Thus, this group of natives journeyed alongside Bell towards his territory, the village of Wegner, which had now transformed into the Wegner stronghold. Tyrion inquired more than once why Bell would not simply recruit the robust clan warriors to form his army, instead of allowing them to leave the Vale with their families. After all, feeding several thousand people would require a substantial amount of provisions, which was not characteristic of a merchant's approach. Bell merely smiled and replied, "They shall not only become my army, they will also become my people." With that, he offered no further explanation. Bell understood that individuals like Tyrion, a Westerosi noble, could not easily grasp many Eastern ideologies. Just as Tyrion could not fathom how the Knights of the Vale would treat the families of clan warriors after they departed the Moon Mountains. The fate awaiting those families would be nothing less than slaughter. Ultimately, these warriors would become a band of homeless wanderers, sowing chaos wherever they roamed. Of course, he also recognized that such considerations were foreign to the noble mindset. However, even when contemplating this layer of thought, the aristocrats akin to him would not endeavor to instigate change, for it would not align with their noble interests. This mindset was one that Bell found distasteful. He had come to this land not to transform himself, but to alter others. Thus, he remained fond of the path of rise and fall bequeathed by his ancestors, reflecting on the compassion he had learned in the previous world. Consequently, he had no intention of engaging in discussions or debates with other nobles. He preferred to demonstrate through his actions that his ancestors' theories were indeed more advanced, and that what he championed was the true essence of truth. Thus, in the outskirts of Robes, Bell bid farewell to Tyrion during the final leg of their journey. Tyrion headed straight for King's Landing, while Bell took the initiative to lead the savages to Wygana village. Upon their arrival at Wygana village, Bel felt a sense of gratification as he beheld a veritable stronghold that had risen from the ground. Indeed, this stronghold bore a semblance to a fortress, as the height and thickness of its walls could rival those of medium to large cities in Westeros. This was largely attributed to the essential knowledge of cement production brought by the traveler. With the assistance of cement, the construction of the stronghold had become significantly grander. Coupled with the aid of asphalt paving, the entire stronghold, while merely labeled as such, resembled a colossal military encampment. Given the foresight and planning for the influx of new inhabitants, accommodating the savages did not take much time. Subsequently, Bel instituted a stringent management system to encourage both the savages' daily lives and souls to evolve towards civilization. He understood that fostering integration among this diverse populace within his domain would be exceedingly challenging. Yet, once this goal was achieved, the army composed of his people would be invincible and unassailable, for they would possess the concept of home, fighting not merely for the gold in their pockets, but for the eternal sanctuary of their souls that lay behind them, regardless of life or death. As the savages, villagers, and the families of previously relocated soldiers adapted to one another, the warriors of the tribe received their assigned armor and weapons, commencing their formal military training. Observing the disarray among the troops, Bel resolved to employ the training methods from his original world. The 600 soldiers who had already undergone military training were appointed as instructors, beginning with the basics of marching in unison. On the first day, the savages found this training amusing, yet after a day or two, they began to perceive their transformation. They themselves could not fathom why such simple and tedious exercises evoked a sense of awe and fervor within them. The orderly formations and resounding chants were cleansing their souls, or perhaps instilling a military spirit. 1 week following the military training, as the savages began to adhere to military regulations, Bel received an invitation to a tournament from King Robert. He entrusted the command of the army to Old Charles, instructing him to remain on standby in Wygana village. Meanwhile, he set forth to King's Landing with 500 soldiers, 300 elite savages, and 200 seasoned veterans. Upon his swift arrival in King's Landing, Bale entered the city accompanied by merely 50 seasoned soldiers, while the remainder lay concealed in the nearby woods, poised for action. Once within the city, guided by the directions of passers-by, Bale and his entourage successfully reached the council chamber. After the guards announced their names and intentions, they gestured for Bale to wait momentarily, as the prime minister was engaged in discussions. Outside the chamber, Bale faintly overheard a conversation within, laced with jest regarding a certain courtesan. Before long, a group emerged from the prime minister's tower, led by an exceptionally handsome youth, whose visage bore a striking resemblance to the young Robert. It was evident that this individual was none other than Robert's younger brother, Renly Baratheon. Following him were a bald, portly man and a shorter, middle-aged gentleman, with the last figure being a rather lecherous old man. Upon spotting Bale, the group exhibited a measure of surprise. Fortunately, Ned timely exited the chamber and introduced Bale to them. At that moment, the shorter middle-aged man displayed a gleeful countenance, addressing Ned, "My Lord Ned, might I request the assistance of some of Lord Bale's men to maintain order in King's Landing?" Ned, caught in a dilemma, glanced at Bale, hesitant to voice his thoughts. He merely indicated that it depended on Bale's disposition, deftly passing the responsibility back to him. Bale, with a resigned smile, nodded in acquiescence, feeling somewhat exasperated at Ned's knack for entangling himself once more. Following the introductions, Bale learned that the diminutive man was none other than Peter Baelish, the master of coin, while the bald man was Varys, the spider, and the lecherous elder was Maester Pycelle. Bale had fortuitously acquainted himself with some of the most powerful figures currently in King's Landing.